Welcome to the Beacon 1% Better podcast, where we discuss how to get 1% better every day with your host, Chip Kispert. I'm RJ Malik, producer of this podcast. Chip, as always, good to see you. So why don't you give us a preview of this edition of the Beacon 1% Better podcast? And as you go along, why don't you introduce your guest too?
Absolutely, RJ. Well, first off, I am super pleased to have Robert Sofia on the show. Robert is CEO of Snappy Kraken. Snappy Kraken is a marketing platform for wealth firms. This solution supports digital marketing, serving both investor prospecting and client servicing. Robert's accomplishments are many, but a few include recruiting over 10,000 advisors with more than $2 trillion in assets under administration, creating the industry's only biannual marketing conference, ranked as one of the top 3 events in the industry, Jolt, building the industry's #1 ranked based on customer satisfaction, Kitschys.com, marketing automation platform. Robert, welcome to the Beacon 1% Better podcast.
Hey, Chip, I'm happy to be here. And I love the title of the podcast too. That makes me want to attend and listen. You know, who doesn't want to get 1% better every day, right?
You know, it's our motto, and it's something that within our organization we believe in and try to make better every day. So with that, Robert, can you share a little background on yourself and Snappy Kraken for our listeners?
Yeah, I'm happy to. This is my 20th year in the industry, actually. Started out as an advisor, worked in an advisory firm, ran all the marketing there, back office, scaled it to about 750 under management, 750 million, pushing $1 billion. Then we started a marketing company, a consultancy called Platinum back in the days. That was from 2009 to 2016. Sold that to FMG in 2016, and started Snappy Kraken. And here I am, 10 years. It'll be 10 years at Snappy Kraken in June, and we serve about 7,000 advisors, 4,000 firms today. So it's been quite a journey. Time
flies, doesn't it? It's unbelievable.
It does. I look in the mirror sometimes, I see my gray temples, and I go, what happened to that young kid, you know?
Well, likewise, I think we're tapping out almost 20 years now, and I'm like, how did we do this? Where'd it go? So right now, Robert, it is, the organic growth is just front and center for a lot of firms. So I'd love to get your perspective on your thoughts on the state of marketing for wealth firms today.
Yeah, it's a really interesting time. It's a challenging time too, because it's super competitive. You've got a lot of private equity money flowing into this space, and these big firms are spending millions of dollars on growth. They're buying leads from all these sources that are investing a massive amount in distribution. And so you've got 68% of the leads that these big firms are buying are being worked by multiple advisors. So it's super competitive. It's hard to stand out. You've also got a lot of AI slop on the internet. It makes authentic quality messaging harder to find. That makes a lot of people tune out. You've got shifting consumer expectations today as the wealth transfer happens. I mean, the expectations that younger generations have of advisors is very different from what baby boomers have historically expected from their advisors. So firms are trying to balance multiple service models. You've got to have a different approach to technology and even planning sometimes for different generations if you want to stay relevant. The pace of technology is really fast, so that's changing the marketing methods that work. What used to work doesn't work. The tools that are available are proliferating. It's hard to know what to use. And so it's a very challenging time, I think, more than ever in this industry, to just figure out how to navigate all that. And yet the firms who really do invest in that, make that part of their focus, they're driving organic growth, they are accelerating, and yet the vast majority of the industry, based on the averages, is stagnating because many firms are not adopting. So you're starting to see a bifurcation of growing firms and those that are not, becoming very clearly distinguished.
So, you mentioned something in your previous comments. You talked about what worked in the past isn't working now. And I think a lot of that comes to the referral, right? But I'm super curious on how you see advisors, the best advisors kind of embracing the need to promote themselves to both existing customers as well as prospects, how you see that changing.
Well, that's the advisor's conundrum. I mean, if you think about why the vast majority of us even got in this industry, it was to serve. And you love the financial planning, you love helping the clients. Historically, you take good care of them, and then you get out and you do networking, and you get enough referrals, and your business grows, and the market keeps growing, and it just was a kind of a simple business for a long time. And yet, what's happening is that I think the overall change in the way consumers interact with businesses, the uh, just the inability to keep up with the growth trends simply on referrals alone, the lack of predictability. It's fine for a lot of advisors who still run solo businesses, but if you're trying to scale, you can't really grow a business and support 5, 10, 50, 100 advisors with referral strategies, not if you want to build a growing enterprise. So the conundrum is, how much time, energy, financial commitment do you spend on your clients and client service and the business model in terms of all of the things that aren't related to growth, and then how much of the time do you spend on growth, strategy, tactics, technology, marketing, content? And most advisors didn't get in the business to do that. So what I'm seeing is that the most successful firms are really picking a lane where they are most qualified and competent and able to drive the best outcomes in the business. And then they are hiring the right people, delegating and outsourcing the functions they're not great at. And so you've got some advisors that crush it at marketing and PR, and you see them, they're very active on social and the conference circuit, and they're out there, they're focused on growth, they're recruiting, they're marketing, and that's their lane. And then you have others that say, they're heads down, they're just focused on their clients, and they're delegating that and they're outsourcing that. What I guess my point is, Chip, is you said, how do you balance both? It's almost impossible to be great at both. It really is. You've got to decide what you're going to be great at, because it's two different professions, and then you got to get the right people to do the part that you're not great at.
Yeah, it was interesting. Last week, I was at one of our mutual customers. Their they had a advisory breakout session for some of their young advisors, some of their sales folks, and we had a lot of discussion about marketing, organic growth, how to promote themselves to the customer, to the prospects, and how they're utilizing way different methods than maybe their predecessors, right?
Yes.
Sure, there's the digital mail, there's the digital flow, but they're also talking about, hey, I got to do these quick social media posts now, and it was really fascinating to hear the younger advisors talk about the promotion, and then think back and compare it to how we grew up with the business, right? So it's very, very different, and a lot more work. Let's be honest.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it's not that all of the old methods don't work. There's a lot of tried and true practices that still work in this industry. We've got advisors who host client events every single month, and we've got advisors who still do seminars. We've got advisors, believe it or not, who still do cold calling, but those things generally just don't scale in enterprise. And so you've got this, it's almost like a bifurcation between a lifestyle business where the advisor is doing all of that themselves, and they're balancing, they're trying to do both, and that business can be fine for a solo or maybe a partnership. But once you start to try to really support other advisors, maybe you want to scale up, and you want to build something with real enterprise value, with a growth rate that goes beyond the industry average, to something that is going to be attractive if you try to exit your business eventually, to have something that can run without you, so that you can either have the freedom or the ability to sell it and not be tied into it. And so when you advisors start thinking about succession and future, they really need to have people to help with those things. I mean, the answer is not usually found in just trying to do it all.
Right. One of the things I always love, I love kind of the stories of hearing how advisors really have been successful. So I guess my next question, Robert, can you share, a couple different instances where your customers committed and now they're seeing really that growth vision is becoming a reality?
We've got hundreds and hundreds of these types of experiences.
I love that.
I'll share a little data, but I'll also share some anecdotes with you. So it's not uncommon for advisors that come and work with us to start to see 200 to 300% increase in lead conversion rates. And that is often because they do a lot of marketing. And so they have leads and contacts in their database, and they're really good at getting the low-hanging fruit. So the people who come in immediately are ready, uh, come in high trust, they're referrals, or they're the few people from an event that you met that you really clicked with, and they're getting that business. It's not hard for advisors to win that business. They don't need marketing even to win that kind of business. But they often have this long tail because typically it takes 9 to 12 engagements for especially a digital lead to really engage. Most advisors aren't really engaging in a meaningful or personalized way 9 to 12 times. And then there is the fact that typically, it's somewhere around 95% of the leads that you generate. I think the actual number is 96, based on the most recent research I saw. They're just not ready to work with an advisor today. But if you engage them long enough, when they re-engage, the closing rate is almost 100%, because at the time they re-engage, they already know who you are. They've been exposed to your brand a lot. You've built trust over time, and they engage because they're actually ready. So the point is that's the data point, and I'm going to give you an actual example. The data point is when you start nurturing all of your leads in a consistent, personalized way, qualifying them, segmenting them, enriching them, and following up with them in that way, you start to see 200 to 300% in conversion rate. So you're getting the same amount of leads, but now you're closing 2 to 3 times as many because of that compounding value of the ongoing communication. Now, how does that look in the real world? I'll give you a perfect example. So we have an advisor came in recently with about 1,000 people on a lead list. It was just, old leads from the past that they really hadn't been doing anything with. We put those leads into systematic nurturing sequences, and over 6 months, 10% of those people booked meetings with him.
Really?
He got 100 extra meetings over 6 months
That's fabulous.
just from activating all those leads in the right way. And so
Wow.
that's an example of where, it's just one, and he closed a lot of that business. So there's many examples like that. Another one I just saw, I actually showcased this yesterday in a webinar. There's an advisor that has a wealth and wellness brand. He does like wellness seminars every month, and the financial components of things is one aspect of how he does this. And so clients come, they talk about overall wellness, including financial wellness. They bring their friends. So he brought in about 70 million in new assets last year from referrals from clients. Great. But when he activated all of the digital marketing strategies, began amplifying these with online advertising, social posts, nurturing all of the people who registered for these events but never showed up, he generated an extra 60 million in new assets from digital channels. So he had 70 million in referrals, which a lot of advisors would say that's success in itself. Net new assets in a year, 70 million, but he also got 60 million from digital. So instead of being at, a 70 million number, now he's 130 million in net new assets. So these are just a couple of examples of the many that we have where advisors just ad hocing this thing, like, hey, I send a few emails from MailChimp. Hey, I post to social media occasionally. Hey, I follow up with my leads a few times. If they're ready, great. If they're not, fine. That's how most advisors do it. But when you actually have a system for moving people from stranger to client, and that system never stops, you get more business, you get more growth. It's really table stakes in today's, digital world.
It is fascinating. And we watch what you guys do. We watch, there's some firms that it's unbelievable what they're doing, and the sophistication of their digital strategies. Really, you talk to 9 to 12 times of really engaging, and it's fascinating. How does question, and this is my curiosity, how do you see social aspect fitting in, right? A lot of advisors are kind of scared of social, right? It's scary. How do you see that fitting into the mix for an advisor practice?
I mean, it depends on the practice. It depends on the ICP, the ideal client profile that they're going after. Social media is a channel, and actually, it's several different channels. I mean, for some, their channel of choice may be LinkedIn. For others, it may be TikTok, and social media plays a part in a lot of aspects of marketing. For example, if somebody Googles you, social media channels will come up very quickly. Social profiles will come up very quickly. And it's one of the best ways for prospects to, for lack of a better word, stalk you online and see what you're all about. And so there's a place for that. But a lot of advisors think that social media is a prospecting tool, and they hear thought leaders talk about it, and you see these advisors who are really skilled at some specific channel. Maybe they're just incredible with video and they've amassed a lot of YouTube followers, and so a lot of advisors come and they're like, yeah, I know I can grow on social media, and you can, absolutely you can. But take a look at who's doing it. Who's really growing on social media? They're not just auto posting random AI curated content from an app. Okay, that's not what they're doing. Like, they're not just swiping their credit card and then letting an algorithm pick what to post for them, and whatever AI slop is out there. That does not get results. They're also not occasionally haphazardly doing it. They are committed. And if you see, it's not just what their company provides. It's not all lead gen content. It's not all focused on that. It's real engagement. There's real authenticity. And they know their client. They know their client is on that channel, and they are speaking to them in their voice on that channel. In other words, they're meeting people where they are, and that's why they're having success. So the point is, social media is a powerful tool like everything else. But when people ask me, what about social media? I would say, well, what about mail? What about podcasting? What about television? What about online advertising? What about radio? I mean, everything has its place for the right advisor who wants to attract the clients that are there. So all that being said, Chip, that's my, I think, important disclaimer that advisors need to understand, right? When it comes to social media, there's no easy button. That being said, if you have a strategy for posting consistently across channels and your content is high quality, it will support your business growth. It absolutely will. If you rely on it exclusively as your only channel for growth, you better be ready to really commit, like we just discussed.
Well, I think your point on authenticity was the one that really resonated with me. Lots of different channels, but authenticity to connect with the prospect, customer, etc. Just really resonated. You've mentioned it a couple times. It's any conference I go to, most conversations I have in the industry right now, this subject raises head. Marketing's front and center. How do you see AI impacting marketing? I got to ask you the question.
Oh man, I mean, it's everything. Everything is getting touched by AI. There is almost no corner of marketing that is not already being impacted and won't continue to be impacted in a very large way by AI. We are really positioning ourselves to be a true AI platform. We continue to leverage it, but you don't see us talking about AI in that way. Like, it's not snappykraken.ai, because we don't see AI in itself as the solution, nor do we see it as anywhere near fully developed yet. So it's very hard to predict what the future is going to bring with AI. But what we see is that it is a way to dramatically speed up your ability to perform any marketing function. So you can do more in less time and with greater precision, with greater personalization. And those are the biggest value points. So let me tell you what I mean by that. First, speed. Historically, you get a new lead, what do? You spend a few minutes entering it into your CRM. Then you decide what to do with it. Are you going to call? Are you going to email? Are you going to text? You're going to put them into a nurturing sequence? How do you know if they're qualified or not? Maybe you have to do some digging. Then you finally decide how you're going to approach this person. Then you, or you don't do any of that. You just approach everybody the exact same way. And by the way, the whole process of that intake documentation, that decision tree, that's 30 minutes, maybe. Okay, let's just take an example. This is a speed example. I'll talk about speed, precision, and personalization. So speed. Now what happens? Any lead from any source, AI immediately reads unstructured data, creates a contact record in your CRM, pulls in third-party enrichment data, tells you if that lead is qualified or not, then automatically adds it to a group of other people who fit the same demographic, psychographic profile, then nurtures them in a sequence that is personalized for them, and then over time scores that lead and tells you when they are both qualified and their intent is high and suggests appropriate outreach. That whole process of getting them in the system and sending the first communication happens in less than 3 minutes. The average response time in our industry is 48 hours. So AI now takes you from responding in 48 hours average to 3 minutes or less. That drives outsized conversion rates. Your ability to actually book meetings with those people goes up multifold because of the speed. Speed, that's one. And the time that you saved.
Right.
Precision. AI can analyze all your data, surface your insights, surface your best opportunities, segment your contacts, tell you where to focus so you're not wasting your time on unqualified leads. All of that precision is there because of the fast data analysis and recommendation engine that AI is. And then we talk about personalization. AI can read all of this data that's being accumulated on people. What are they clicking on out of your content? What are they viewing? What are they spending the most time on? Which channel are they engaging with the most? And at some point, with all that data, now you can actually, without even knowing it's happening, without even thinking about it, have AI personalizing content for that person based on all of that data. And that means that they're going to get messages that are more relevant for them, which is going to drive up your response rates, your engagement rates, your conversion rates. AI is touching every bit of that process, and that creates speed, precision, and the relevance and personalization drives better results. And those are just a few examples. I didn't even talk about using LLMs to create content, which is a whole nother beast.
So you're all in on AI.
Well, all in. It's a funny expression. I like all, or like most, also have some sense of trepidation. I am going in on AI in a continuous, measured, thoughtful way, primarily focused on our data strategy around it, our compliance strategy around it, and the next thing is just being aware of the developments because it's actually doubling in its power every 7 months. Because if you don't stay dialed into that, you will very quickly get left behind because AI is going to be doing things in a few months that we didn't know it could do a few months ago, and that is something you just have to stay in tune with. So I'm all in on keeping up with it. I don't know what it means for the future of mankind. I'll just put it that way.
That's an interesting point. No, it's interesting because we're getting more and more advisors kind of coming to us and what enterprise wealth firms and talking about, all right, I think we need to put create our own AI policy. And it's amazing how many of these firms are using AI, but they really don't have any policies around it. And we got to start taking a look at where that data is going, how it's being used, how it's being retained, et cetera. So it's a fascinating area, fast growing without a doubt. You say 7 months, it feels like it's every 2 months, how fast it's moving. So
It does.
I'm going to move to our next question, but when you look at the wealth space and you study the industry, a lot of folks in the industry and the advisors, who do you follow and pay particularly close attention to?
Yeah, the leaders of the fastest growing RIAs in this space are really interesting to me. I follow the leaders of firms like, Mariner and Carson Group and Focus and Merit and I could just go on and on about modern wealth management. And these when I see firms that are entering the space or have been in the space for some time but are really adding billions in AUM every year, and they're doing it organically and inorganically. I really follow those strategies. There's a lot to be said for the thought leaders in the industry. I could talk about people's newsletters I read, and a lot of people who are household names that everyone knows, and I probably subscribe to their newsletters as well. But I'm a lot more interested in when I see the media or podcasters interview the people who are doing that, who are accomplishing that, because that's, we're in the business of driving growth at Snappy Kraken. We are a automated growth platform. So for me to continue to do that in the most cutting edge way, I have to know what the fastest growing firms are doing. And I learn a lot from them because I see, for example, I see firms struggling to implement Salesforce and Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And I see them spending years building out these very, very complex workflows and round robins for leads and multifaceted integrations. And they end up having these big implementation teams of marketers and technologists. And they spend, literally tens of millions of dollars. I work with one firm, they dedicated $12 million to building out their growth engine in 1 year. And so I pay attention to that because for Snappy Kraken, that's our future. We are making all of that simple. So we're taking the, multi-million dollar investment in people and technology and figuring out how to let firms do it for 6 figures or less and make it out of the box, plug and play, deeply integrated with the tools they use. So that's my lane, Chip. That's where I focus. I want to know, what are the biggest firms that are really well capitalized doing, and how can I take that and make it accessible and available to the very smallest firms in the industry and help them continue to compete at a higher level.
I think that's great. I wish, and we're on the consulting side. Yes, we do a lot of marketing. I wish we had something as easy to use as your platform. I'll be honest, because we may be on one of those platforms that you just mentioned. So one of the things that we always like to do before we wrap up the show is to give you a flash comment. So Robert, you got about a minute or so to provide your 1% better every day flash comment for our podcast today.
Everything we've talked about with technology and AI and data is secondary to people. And there are always people in this industry who are smarter, faster, better. They may work for you or they may be outside your company. And the more that you listen and really pay attention to people, to their recommendations, don't think you have all the answers, stay humble, stay hungry, let people showcase their expertise. Don't think you have to have all the credit. The better you're going to be at keeping up with all of this. If you surround yourself with people who are doing it and you give them the space to do that great work, they will take you farther than you ever could on your own. So for me, I find that although I can't read as much as I want, although I can't go back and get all the education I want as freely as I could in the past because I'm too busy, just by listening to the people around me, I get better every single day. And by really trying to imitate their good qualities and even learn from the bad ones too. I think that's been a big part of my secret to success, I guess you could say.
How refreshing was that? That was terrific. Really, that resonated with me. I think one of the things, we don't listen enough, and I think that's fabulous. So, Robert, I want to thank you for joining me on the Beacon 1% Better Everyday podcast. I'm so grateful to have you as one of my go-to people for all things marketing. I love to hear your thinking, and you truly are one of the leaders in our industry. And I look forward to having you on the show again soon.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
RJ, wow. I really enjoyed having Robert on the show. He was terrific.
He really was. Yeah, absolutely.
There are three thoughts that he shared that really resonated with me. And honestly, there were a lot more than three.
Yeah, I agree.
But, in talking in our conversations, I think number one is that, marketing really is a required cornerstone for advisors' businesses. right? That's one of the things I really took away to really drive organic growth. The other one, which isn't it is a part of marketing, but it is so important to be authentic and not be, manufactured or plastic. When he talked about, advisors and YouTube channels and being able to have their authentic message out there, I love that. I thought that was absolutely terrific. And then, it was interesting because he wove in AI through all our conversations. And at times it was plus, at times it was a little negative. But what really kind of came away is how AI is speeding up the process of marketing. He talked about taking, a marketing process that once took 48 hours and now it's down to 3 minutes. That is amazing.
Yeah, there was just so much there.
And you add to that, the ability as you collect the data, as advisors are collecting the data, and you have this data to be able to take that unstructured data and enable better personalization to really connect with that customer. Again, I thought that for a third point for me, that was pretty amazing.
Lots of good stuff there. It seemed, it's one of these things where I think this is a type of podcast you're going to have to listen to twice to get all the information.
Yeah. All right. So as I go to kind of sign off, I want to say, hey, lastly, check out our archive of past shows with industry leaders like Jeff Moore, Valmark, iCouplers, Derek Notman, and Dave Goes from Advising, to name a few. These can all be found at beaconstrategiesllc.com/podcasts. We here at Beacon encourage you to get 1% better every day. And to quote Walt Whitman, and most recently, Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental. Until our next episode, this is Chip Kispert. Be well.
Thanks, Chip. And we need to add in a shout out as this podcast is brought to you by Beacon Strategies, LLC, the go-to resource for roundtables, consulting, and services that support wealth management firms and their providers. If you need some industry perspective or help, please visit beaconstrategiesllc.com. And thank you for listening to the Beacon 1% Better podcast. We ask you to share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review because this actually helps others find the show. Again, thank you for listening. And for Chip Kispert and everyone at Beacon Strategies, I'm RJ Malik, and we look forward to you joining us for our next podcast.